This is Roberto Blake, a content creator with over 600,000 subscribers and the author of the best-selling book, Create Something Awesome. He teaches millions of people how they can turn their passion into content creation and earn thousands of dollars from it. And today, he's here to drop some gems which will help you become a successful content creator. I'm Doc Williams, a no-code tool specialist and tech entrepreneur with over 12 years of experience. Let's get started. All right, thank you so much for taking the time. First of all, for our audience, we know who you are, but could you tell everyone who you are and what you do?
Sure, I guess I could do that. My name is Roberto Blake. I'm a creative entrepreneur, public speaker, newly minted best-selling author over the last year. I'm a YouTube content creator with over 600,000 subscribers. I've made 1,600 educational videos on YouTube that frankly help anyone who wants to be a content creator or make money online learn the skills that they need, not just the strategies, help people increase their reach online, their reputation and social proof, and also build multiple streams of income and increase their revenue. So I guess that's me in a nutshell. Something like that. I guess that's
a big nutshell. Yeah. Right, well, also too, and I saw you at the book signing yesterday for Create Something Awesome. Yep. Congrats on the book and the success and everything. I was just recommending this to 2 people yesterday at the event for.
Yeah, no, the feedback on it's been great. We get great reviews for it on Amazon. I'm very proud of it. I feel like it's helped a lot of people. And on to the second book already.
That's good times. Yeah. All right, I got to hear about that in a minute.
Yeah.
So the reason we wanted to talk to you was a lot of people see you right now as a YouTube educator and help so many people. But we want to go back a little bit further because you mentioned at the beginning of your career, you did a lot of
freelancing.
Exactly. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because our audience is in between. They're still consulting and doing freelancing before they're going to be a full-time creator. Could you talk about that?
That's wildly practical. I mean, one of the best things you can do is make sure that one, you have a skill set, you're building up your social proof, your network, your reputation, and that you're having a stable income for you and your family. Freelancing is a great way to do that, to build the bridge. You could even think of freelancing now evolving if you look at people like, Justin Welsh, and also if you look at Dan Coe, they've been talking a lot about the one-person business, which essentially, to a degree, what freelancing is if you take it very, very seriously and if you productize a service, as we would say. So that means you're moving beyond this world of being leveraged labor, hourly contract, or so on and so forth, to value-based pricing, like my friend Chris Do would say, who does a great job with what he does over at The Future. I actually helped them with that YouTube channel very early on in their career. He's helped me and mentored me a lot in business as well and everything like that. That's a really great way to look at the exchange of value, is that, you meet in the middle, you always have something to give someone always has something to give you. And then as business owners, even a one-person solo entrepreneur, one-person business, one-person agency even, as a freelancer, you're taking your skills, you're solving a real problem for someone playing for real stakes in their own business, in their own career, what have you, and then you're able, by virtue of producing results for them, easing those pain points, you're able to make a living. And that's kind of where I started, with the foundation of my skills being photography, videography, graphic design, video editing, and also copywriting. But I'm weird in the fact that I can do multiple things, but I'm very dedicated to the things that I do. I'm very passionate about it. Not everyone's gonna be good at multiple things, but there are some skill sets that build on top of each other, like the photography and video build on top of each other. A lot of the skill sets from that bleed over to graphic design. So really, your main default there is just visual communication. It's actually one skill with 3 expressions of it if you look at it from that perspective. It's one skill, 3 expressions of the skill.
Could you go a little bit more about that? You're saying the expressions. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Ultimately, visual communication, as I said, you can express that in a lot of ways. You can express that with graphic design. If you take that graphic design, though, and then you add the dynamics of motion to it, for example, now you are doing motion graphics, connect typography, animation to a degree. So now you're a motion graphics animator on top of a graphic designer. You went from static expression and communication to motion-based expression and communication. You just added another dimension and level of difficulty. Those are 2 things, but the skill set for that crosses over very heavily into video editing and storytelling, which then is also the evolution of photography, where you're expressing visually through an image now Image in motion is the video component. So again, it's the evolution of that. I had a background as a photographer for a very long time, freelancing even since I was a teenager, with that coming up through the church community, dealing with photography and video. So that's the evolution of that skill set. Graphic design and web design are something I started as a teenager, doing that locally. I started coding at 13. So I got into those things very, very early, very, very deeply. This is why I could be good at multiple things that build on top of each other, because it's like, here's the static version of the skill set. Then I went to the motion version of the skill set on both of those. So then I got these different expressions of communicating an idea visually, and I had those under my umbrella. And so when you then combine that, well, let's talk about communication as a whole. You can take your verbal communication, and then if you're very articulate, very thoughtful, you're well read, you have a good vocabulary, you have a good command of language, if you then are able to do that in the form of writing, now you have taken your verbal communication and then evolved it and then put it into another medium now. And so now you're building on top of that stack. So what's the foundational skill of all of that? Communication. So now you have communication with these different versions of expression. And then when you apply some depth or nuance or level of difficulty to them, now you have these higher level expressions of them. And now you have this very diverse skill set and toolbox at your disposal. And if you're me, you're gonna monetize all of it.
I love it. I love it. Really good thoughts, and for people to think about, they're going to have to go back and really think about where they fit in, and then build upon
that's a little deep, right?
Yeah, but that's good. That's a really good starting point to think about. When you're seeing different ones that start in freelancing, all of those different things, they might feel overwhelmed. Would you say to pick one service or something like that as they're starting out with? And
I would say I could see you could either lean into the offering that best matches your ability and your passion for it, as long as you know for a fact that it makes money and how it makes money and that there is demand for it. On the other hand, you could look at what there's demand for that makes money, and then even if you're not that passionate about it, as long as you don't hate it, you could just make yourself determined to become very good or good enough at it. And so you could work backwards from that based on what you want to optimize for. You can optimize for money and that be the primary driver, or you can optimize maybe for some form of happiness or fulfillment, but try to extract as much money in a practical way from that. You could optimize around that. And the thing is, there are seasons of life where those choices could be more valid than the other. Primary example, if you're in struggle bus mode, like, to be honest with you, to a degree, as harsh as it sounds, if you're on struggle bus mode, you're really hurting for money, screw passion. Screw passion. Screw how you feel about it. If you're good at it and it makes money and there are people who want it, just go ahead, get over yourself and do it, because then you'll be in a position to have the luxury of caring about your passions at some point, as long as you can get yourself out of the hole. That's something that I went through.
Very interesting. So with that, for ones that are in that freelance and they see creators on the other side, what would be that threshold that you encourage them before they try to step over and think that it's going to be beautiful just because they're a creator now? How can they reassess before they put that foot out to go full-time or to be that creator that they want to?
Re-examine your skill set and your toolbox. For one thing, consider the resources that would be required to be a creator that can be competitive. And then also consider the skill sets that would be required to be a creator that would be competitive. You want to start putting yourself in that position, because the thing is, the world doesn't need another mediocre content creator, and there's not any money in being a mediocre content creator. So the thing is, using the skill set from the freelancing and the one-person business to give yourself the resources. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, but having some sort of war chest to go and compete with would actually matter if you want to go forth and you want to conquer, if you want to enter into a niche that's very competitive. Not saturated, but very competitive in terms of the quality and expectation. See, the thing is, the market's saturated with low effort, low value, low quality, low consistency. You benefit not at all competing on that level with the 90%. You want to look at the top 10%. You want to look at the top 10 people in the market. You want to have standards that allow you to stand next to them and not feel out of place. Now, that seems disqualifying for a lot of people, but I'm just saying in terms of taking it the most serious. It's not disqualifying for a hobbyist to just work with what you have, what have you, as a hobbyist. But if we're talking about being a professional, if we're talking about we want to make money, the market isn't interested and doesn't care about your origin sob story or your struggles or your lack of resources. The market cares about the quality that it wants to consume, and it's not really interested in mediocrity. It's not really interested in your struggle bus story. So the thing is, you have to come correct. You have to come out of the gates swinging. That doesn't mean you have to be the next Mr. Beast. That doesn't mean you have to be the next Marquez Brownlee. But it does mean you need to understand what it looks like to compete in that market, position, brand, and market yourself accordingly. And that might take some resources. That might take some training and development. That might take some trial and error. And that might take some investment in the tools of the trade that you have to bring into battle with you if you're going to compete in the arena.
Love it. Just want to make sure I'm okay. Just making sure that two more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's more than fine. We probably got time for 2 or 3, but go ahead.
Okay. So the next portion that I wanted to mention is, you mentioned Create Something Awesome, the book.
Yes.
Who is this for?
This, in my mind, is for creators at varying different levels because I covered a lot in the book. There's about 20 chapters in the book. I talk about the mental health struggles of being a creator and the reality of that. That could apply to a creator, whether they're a working class creator with a 9-to-5 job still, whether they've just are starting to transition into being full-time, or even if they're an established creator. That portion of the book, there's about 4 or 5 chapters dedicated to the mental health realities. That is useful regardless, because even if you're established, you may have not set the right boundaries. You may not have really invested in the introspection of your mental health. You may not be putting yourself in a position to optimize for a little bit more peace in your life. A lot of creators overwork. There's a whole chapter about that. And so in that regard, even if you're an established creator, even if you're making 6 figures, the reality is you could still be neglecting your mental health in ways that you didn't acknowledge. And even if you have acknowledged them, sometimes it just helps to feel a little bit more seen and know that you're not alone and that that's something normal to experience for you. And that can really help. Imposter syndrome is talked about in the book. Criticism is something you'll deal with at every single level as a creator, and that's in there. And even if you're an established creator, it doesn't mean you've explored all your monetization options, and I cover that fairly well in the book. And there's, I think, also the business side of being a creator. Even established creators overlook that because they started as hobby creators and they become accidental entrepreneurs. There is a lot of fundamental business knowledge they lack. And the appendix at the back of the book answers a lot of one-off questions. There's no way not to get value.
I love it. You mentioned like accidental entrepreneurs, that section. Could you talk about maybe there was a moment in time where you felt like, I'm my own brand, like I've made my own brand, or were you purposeful where you're like, I'm getting to this point and now I'm a personal brand? Could you talk about that?
I started to some degree with that in mind from the beginning, but I had an unfair advantage. I came from the world of marketing and advertising, and even when I worked in the web hosting industry, where our customers were building their own online brands and business and so on and so forth. And then as a photographer, I'd worked with people who were trying to be independent musicians, artists, and people building a personal brand. So I already had that perspective going in. So there's a vast difference there. I'd also had the benefit of being on the online community and even in YouTube for the very beginning. So I had a sense of this. So when I was starting, I wasn't starting in the place that most beginners start because I had a tremendous advantage in the knowledge and background that I have, which is why I wrote a book where if you are a beginner, you can have the benefit of that experience and knowledge and not start as naively as most people do. That was my unfair advantage. That's why even 90% of creators never get to 10,000 subscribers in YouTube. Within 2 years of taking it seriously, I had 20,000 subscribers. But in year 3, I went from 20,000 to 100,000. That's massively abnormal. And I didn't go viral. And I wasn't an entertainer. I wasn't making prank content. I wasn't trying to entertain the masses. I was making content for a very limited subset of the market of people trying to solve one problem one day at a time. I went daily. I made over 700 videos. The thing is, I can tell you that even in my 20 to 100,000, 1 year overnight quote unquote success, I didn't even do it correctly with the knowledge that I have now. It would have been either faster or I would have gone further with it in that because I was still somewhat optimizing around doing things I liked more than things that I had proven data to show were being successful. I could have done less work, gotten even more growth even further if I had ruthlessly pursued what was working to the exclusion of what wasn't, even if what wasn't working was satisfying personally, selfishly made me a little bit more happier. I wanted to make that because I wanted to make that. If I got out of my feelings and I really ruthlessly went more business, more optimization, more growth, more reputation on it, it could have been bigger. It could have been better, because instead of only 20% of my results carrying me, 80% of my results would have carried me. So that means I could have probably 4x multiplied that if I inverse the 80-20 rule of do 80% what's working, maybe only 20% of experimentation or what I like. I had enough data. I had enough information. I wasn't executing on it because I was in my feelings.
It's very interesting. Now, if I'm correct, you have a membership for, you mentioned if you could look back at yourself and do it better. How are you helping right now? Of course, you have the book. Is there other ways for people to be able to take advantage of that opportunity and they don't have that support?
Well, we have the Awesome Creator Academy Pro Group. They can go to awesomecreatoracademy.com if they want to find out about that. The reason I started the Pro Group membership, and I started this about 5 years ago, one of the things I regret about my early creator journey, those first 3 to 4 years, was just how insulated and isolated I was. I was an introvert. I was also doing this thing solo. There's a lot of struggles and challenges with that. It takes a big mental health toll that most people won't admit to, open up about. There's not a lot of sympathy for your struggles if you achieve success that seems out of reach to other people. But as a human being, you're just still going through, and you know that there's not going to be sympathy for it. So you just bury these things deep down. You don't deal with them. And it's really hard. And it's hard when you don't have a community of support, when you don't have a village to like lift you up, hold you up, and to be there for you. And it's one of the things I regretted. And I regretted believing that there weren't people who would be there for me if I only reached out and asked for the help, asked for the support, asked for just a listening ear or a shoulder once in a while. I deeply regret that I held to myself this belief that nobody wanted to help me and I had to do it all by myself, because I was coming from that place of hurt, of that being some of my previous experience and being in the previous career that I left. And also ventures where I tried to do things with my friends that didn't work out, and just feeling like I'm just in it all by myself. And the thing is, it didn't have to be that way. And there were people that would have helped me and supported me in the way that I was looking for. And so what I did was, later, when I had the opportunity and I had the confidence and I had the resources, I decided to build what would have been most helpful to me, and to have a place of having that support. I had to do all this and navigate without a true mentor. I had to have heroes from afar, people like Pat Flynn. I had to look to people who were successful in a way that I could only dream of and work backwards for them. And in a way, I had to have this distant hero worship of them saying one day. And now some of these people are good friends of mine. These were people who were mentors from afar, Pat Flynn, Chris Ducker. And these are people now that I can text or call whenever I want, and they will help me in any way that I need, or listen to me, or collaborate with me. And I'm very grateful to that. But they provided me with knowledge and insights and things without ever knowing me. They planted those seeds. It grew into trees that sheltered me and into fruit that I got to eat from afar. And I wanted to do that for other people. They inspired me. I wouldn't be where I am without the people that helped along the way, even when they didn't know they were helping me. And so what I built was because I wanted to follow in those footsteps. I wanted to do that for people. So that's where we are.
I love it. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for expressing that. One last question, and then we'll be there.
Yeah. Getting in my feelings. There we go. Yes, like that.
This is good. Is there any question you wish I would have asked, or we go through this, but you're like,
I love that question. I always ask people that question. The question I think maybe nobody asked me about is what ultimately, I think the question that nobody asked that would be very profound to hear the answer to, which I'll give you the answer if you want, is what drives and what motivates me to keep self-improving. You would think, and you would look at what I have, and you would say, it's like, well, why do you keep going to conferences and events? Why do you keep studying? Why do you still read 30 to 50 books a year? What are you still trying to improve at? Are you just chasing more money? Are you just chasing more status? Like, what is the motivation for doing what you're doing? And the thing is, for me, there's several layers to it. There's the obvious layer of wanting to continue to help my mom, my sisters, my younger brother. I'm the oldest of 4 children, child of divorce. There's obviously a lot of people in my life that I want to be able to provide for, protect, and to make sure that I give them the best life that I'm capable of. I'd like to start a family of my own. It's like, ladies, I'm still single. And that's something I've always looked forward to in my life. And the thing is, I started a lot of that later in life because I spent the last decade of my life really optimizing around money and security and stability, and to build that foundation and to lift the people in my family up. I'm first generation. I'm first generation American. My family is Panamanian and everything like that. We literally, come from very, very modest, humble beginnings, and it gets very hard. Even if you start out a little well off, if you end up being a child of divorce, you know what that's like. You know that it takes a very drastic turn despite any best effort that can be made. There's just less resources. There's just less to go around. And it's also hard being the oldest child, for those who know what that's like, and being a surrogate parent in that regard. And so my life has been optimized around responsibility and security for a very long time, and it doesn't always leave a lot of room for other things. And so now I'm looking at changing that, and I know there's more work I have to do to be able to change that. So I have to be better, I have to be more to have more in my life and have more room in my life. So I know I need to do that. The other thing is, there's a deeper impact I want to make. Your legacy is what is left of you after you're gone. It's all the people you touched. It's all the trees that you planted for people that will never know who you are, but will find shade and shelter under those trees and eat from that fruit. And I am not done planting. And so that is something that I think of differently than a lot of people. I am not done planting. And so the impact I want to have after I'm gone, whether it's attributed to me or not, I want it to be significant. I want to make that dent in the universe. And so for me, a legacy is very important. And the legacy that I know I will have if I build 10,000 people up that I know can own something of their own, make up to $100,000 a year. If I do that for 10,000 people, I made a $1 billion impact. In the grand scheme of things, it might seem like a drop of a bucket, but if they do truly follow in my footsteps and they lift up 10,000 people, well, what's that now? That is something that could be, through 1 to 2 generations of my legacy in the world, be trillions of dollars of impact and goodwill in the world. That's not insignificant. That's not a small thing. So that's what I think about. So I think about legacy building. I think about true empire building, true kingdom building. And the thing is, it comes when you plant enough seeds. Not all of them will harvest. Not all of them will bear fruit, but enough of them will if you keep planting them. So that's what drives me. That's what motivates me. That's what gets me up in the morning. That, and of course, dollar signs. So there you go. I need the war chest. That's how you build an empire. You build a war chest.
I love it.
You build a war chest. You build an army of followers. You have them believe in the things that you believe in that are right and good in the world. And then you make sure that that legacy and that belief system is put out there and is codified and is in a way that people can understand, and where they can see the undeniable value and results that produces and know that it is good.
Roberto, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having time.
Thank you.